Okie dokie, good evening and welcome to another Open Your Mind Internet Radio. You have myself, Stephen George, all alone in the world this evening. Actually waiting on our special guest this evening to arrive. I'm going to try him again momentarily, but in the meantime, it is Sunday. It's the 6th of October 2013, and a little bit of news to get the old ball rolling. The no vote that we were all hoping for in the recent get rid of the Shannon or abolish the Shannon election, we actually got the no vote. So a round of applause to everyone who voted no, although the margin kind of seemed a little bit strange. I was kind of predicting 51 yes, 49 no, because I thought, the wheels of corruption would have made sure that the yes vote got through. However, it was a margin nonetheless, but it was on the no vote, so that was kind of cool. That was interesting. We got what we wanted. Now we just have to keep going onward and upward and build on that. And obviously the battle ain't over yet. Now, a little note. Mentioned this last week and also the previous week, so I'm going to mention it again because it is going to be coming up on the 12th of this month. I do believe that is next Saturday, and it's the Bank Forum offers solution to Ireland's financial crisis, and it's thought-provoking American lawyer Ellen Brown. She's going to be heading a day-long forum on economic options for Ireland, with a presentation at the Springfield Hotel in Leixlip, County Kildare on October the 12th. The programme for the day includes presentations from Jamie Dowling, the originator of an internet-based concept called AirBank. I think we're probably all very familiar with AirBank. Also, Anthony Miguels, I think it's Miguels, the Dutch promoter of a new interest-free currency, James Devaney of Leixlip, who will also speak on current attempts by the government to amalgamate Irish credit unions. And also, Claire Cullinan. She's a good friend here of OYM. She's also the Cork organiser responsible for helping people facing eviction from their homes. So that's the one not to be missed on the 12th of October. Admission is €10. If you can pull €10 out of the kitty, it's probably worth going to. And moving on from that, there's going to be 2 more appearances by Ellen Brown, and she's going to also speak at the Imperial Hotel in Cork on the 14th, and again at the Hudson Bay Hotel in Athlone on the 15th. Now, what's next? Yeah, just a little interesting article that I read on Facebook today, and I actually have popped it in the chat box, which I suppose I should check the chat box just to make sure. No information in there saying that the audio was too hot or too cold or anything, so okay. But yet there's the HSE, seemingly, that's the Health Service Authority. Actually, I would have thought the HSA, but HSE. They've gagged a surgeon. He was making claims about cholesterol drugs, statins. His research has basically showed that they may do more harm than good, so they have pretty much put a gagging order on him. He's not allowed to speak to any members of the media or the press in relation to his thoughts or his findings. So that's kind of interesting. Anything else? No. Oh yeah, there was actually something that I came across as well, and I think we've probably heard it already, and that was the Santos Bonacci conference in Belfast was seemingly shut down by the Gardaí. It seems the establishment doesn't really want the information that Santos is putting about. They don't want it getting about, because obviously people are starting to wake up to what's going on, and it's obviously not in their interest. They really don't want people knowing.
Hello.
Harry! I was sweating there for a few minutes.
Sorry about that. Just in off a busy schedule. It has never ending. It's great fun though.
It's funny, I was just saying that. Alan has just jumped in there to kind of bridge the little gap before you got yourself sorted. But we're just saying like that you do have a busy schedule, and a lot of the information that you generally give to people, some people are probably hearing it for the second or the third time or the fourth time, but I think that's really how you get it into people and make them, just you have to really drill it in. But there's a lot of people out there who are probably only hearing it for the first time. So I'm thanks for agreeing to come on and share the information. Although it's, as I say, you're probably going to be giving out the information for a second, third, fourth, 100th time.
Yeah, since the 90s.
Since the 90s.
Yeah.
Jesus, it's amazing because a lot of people weren't even awake, didn't have a clue what was going on, or if anything, in the 90s, and you're obviously you're awake since then or before then.
I started asking questions at 7, when the communion. I always start at the beginning. People say, "How did you get into this stuff?" Because when I was 7, I was told I had to make this thing called a communion.
Yeah.
And that to a kid, that I thought it was porridge or custard, because it sounded like that, So I said, "Well, how do you make your communion or communion?" Because I was making porridge since I was 7. Yeah. So I thought communion was actually a type of, substance you consume. So when I asked these questions, I didn't get any reply, or I got a blank expression, or then I was told a lie. Well, the communion is you have to do it, and I said, well, what is it?
Yeah.
So the way parents fobbed kids off years ago had a detrimental effect on me, because I haven't stopped asking questions since, and I haven't believed anything since unless I investigated myself.
Yeah, and fair play to you for doing that, because a lot of the videos that I've seen that you have done, and a lot of the information that you even have up on your website, it is kind of like that. You kind of seem like the sort of person who just questions everything. That no matter what anyone says, that you'll always kind of you seem like the person who'll always kind of go away quietly and do your own research, and then come back for round 2 or something.
Yeah, it's important that everybody does that,
Yeah, and I never even got to get. I had a lovely introduction here in Alfie. I never got to do it because a lot of people are always saying, I don't know if you frequent our chat room on the OYM, but anytime we're talking about information like even return to sender, there's a few posters there, and they always refer to you. You're fondly known in our chat room as washers, because as the way you always say, slide a few washers. But I actually had a lovely introduction. So Harry from We The People, or as Vin calls you, Henri O'Reilly, and that was my best stab at the Irish language. But where is it now? It's on my screen here somewhere. Yeah.
Somewhere there. But there's only a fraction of information up on that We The People site, because I actually haven't time to rejig it, and I haven't got the big computer skills to do so. You know what I mean? So there's only a fraction of it. I post most of it up on MSI, and I should post it up on your site too, because it's handy for people to just click on and get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some of the information, Harry, that you have. And I know you want everyone to know the information, and you want to share the information. So I've been doing this for a while. There's a local, both myself and Alan, we live in kind of, I won't say out in the sticks, but it's outside Kells anyway. And we both kind of have local websites, and I have a local website here that I post stuff to all the time. And sometimes, every now and again, I get a piece of information. It could be a video, a link to a video that you've done. It could be a piece of text from We The People. It could be something from MSI. It could be something from OYM. And I just put it up on the site, because what I find is that a lot of the stuff, it's in plain English. A child could understand it, and I think that's kind of paramount when you're trying to educate people. That if you make it easy for them to digest, it'll obviously sink in much quicker.
Oh, do you do it? And kids understand it quicker than adults.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been medicated with the tap water programs, television programs, programs in general. So when kids get this, right, they just sing it. It's just normal to them, because You know, when I say to a kid, you know, my girl, I say to her, what does that say? And she kind of looks at me and laughs. She said, Dad, that doesn't say anything. It's only a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And that's how she is now, you know what I mean? And we have a great laugh over this because the paper doesn't speak. That's why they call it stationery. It doesn't move. So they need everybody sign a nature, a signature on those pieces of paper to give it life. Other than that, it's dead. It doesn't apply to you. So this is how, you know, people can affect change if adults cop onto the simple fact, they can completely transform their lives, you know? Because, like, notices, we did the notice course there about a year or so ago with the e-flow, just to prove how and why this works, because the noticing law is not a bill. Now, most adults can't get that because they've been cooked to believe you have to pay notices. E-flow notices, you know, television notices, income tax notices. And simply, all you got to do is return to sender and continue to do that because the noticing law is not a bill. That's how simple it is. But to try to tell adults that, it's like trying to peel an onion that's been layered over and over for years.
Yeah, but it's like you're saying that the adults have become so conditioned over the years that they, you know, this new information, they just can't absorb, or it sounds alien. But you explain it to a child, someone who's at that, you know, an impressionable age, and you can explain both sides of an argument to them. Like the one that we're kind of getting hit over the head with day in, day out in school or in society, and you could also explain, say, the return to sender and the notice versus the bill. Children can understand that because, like you, I've done the very same with my children. Well, my daughter's 12. My son is 7. He didn't get it at all, but I'll leave that for another day. But my daughter, she was able to grasp it and she could see sense. You know, when you explain it in simple English, and you know, you just watch her eyes, she got it straight away. And it made perfect sense because she was kind of going, yeah, that's right, yeah, a bill. You'd have to pay a bill. And then notice, you know, sure, said, what's a notice? You see these notices up, you see them in gardens and people's gardens saying, site notice. And she goes, yeah, does that mean you have to pay something? But she was able to grasp it. However, but this information that I've kind of gleaned from you, from Vin, from other sources as well, I go into work with this information and I try to share it with people, and a lot of the people, like one of the women I work with, she's an accounts manager and has been for a long time, and even her, she's not closed-minded, but I shared some of the information when she was talking about the property charge, and I said the exact same as what you did. I said, what did the paper say, or what did the piece of paper say? Oh, well, it said this, that, and the other, and I went, well, did it speak to you? Don't be ridiculous. No, it didn't speak. I said, well, how could it say anything? I said, there was words printed on it. And I said, as a wise man said, those words are, you know, they're placed there in such a way, and the spelling, because it's all about, you know, casting a spell on you and using fear. And she could see what I meant, and she kind of looked as if she was getting it. But then she says, no, you have to pay it, and that's it. So, I mean, you're right. I think kids are the one to educate the kids, and I think the adults will then, you know, maybe they will follow.
Sure, the kids will teach the adults, and you know that's beginning to happen now. You know, it'll happen quicker. You know, with kids.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is. But I mean, if adults wake up, all you need to do is to wake up. But to being cooked with fluoridated tap water and aluminium sulfate in the water, propaganda from the television and mainstream media, you know, and they won't let any of us, you know that. The chance of any of us getting on the likes of mainstream media is slim, and certainly not on TV. No. So, because you don't want the information out there, because it's controlling. It's just, that's how they keep the whole regime together.
Yeah, well, that's what I seen earlier, as I was just explaining before you came on, that I seen some information on the internet. I think I heard it already, but I seen some video footage of a conference that Santos Bonacci did in Belfast, and obviously I think there were 6 parts of a video, and towards the end it was obviously the end of part 6. There was a bit of a kerfuffle on stage, and people were there, and the whole thing had to be shut down. I think there was some cock and bull reason given as to why. The reason I don't know, but I mean, all he's doing, he's just trying to educate people, and they don't want the information out there. I mean, that's why it's so important to have people like you who, you know, are not afraid to just mix it up and get stuck in there and just educate people and just tell them, and, you know, give them the information, show them the information. And I think the beauty of what you're doing, and maybe people don't even appreciate it, is that you're giving your time and you're educating people. You don't have to. You could just sit on your backside, put the feet up, and watch the world go by. But obviously, as a father, you're doing it. You're doing what you're doing for the future of your children, my children, and everyone else's children. And people just don't even realise that.
Yeah, well, it's only for the likes of yourselves, OYM and MSI, and a couple of other people. And I'll be on mainstream Liffey FM, I think, tomorrow as well. Not time I go on there because Mick the Fish, he has that program. I think it's what's it called? I think it's on at 9:00.
The World You Don't Know.
World You Don't Know. That's it. So occasionally get on that. Occasionally I get on a radio station if they're talking about stuff I might get on, and then I can squeeze it in, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But only for the likes of yourselves and ourselves and the people who are listening to this all over the world, probably. I mean, it's up to us. Once the light switch goes on, we actually have a duty to wake up our fellow man and woman to this, you know.
Yeah.
And, people don't have to pay notices. And, what we do is we copy this. Anybody who's interested in this, we can post them out a package of information to prove it, you know. And it's only when people hold the proof in their hands and see it and read it, for example, the penny really drops down, you know. And then some people have different reactions. Some people get annoyed, which is very understandable. When the penny does drop into the slot, they get kind of angry because they know they've been lied to, you know.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the video you done with the e-flow notice, and I mean, you can't really question that. I mean, the information is there. You go through it all. You show exactly, you know, step by step what you sent to them and what they sent back to you. And even today, like when you mention to people the power of return to sender, and you kind of talk about, that's not really addressed to you. Oh, it is, my name's on it. No, it's not. That's for Mr. all capital letters. That's not you. And even that, people still, a lot of people kind of find that very, very hard to believe. I've said it to many people, and there's a brilliant video on the net there. You Meet Your Strawman. And I think Meet Your Strawman, it's about 5 minutes long. And I think that sums it up, and I know you've seen it anyway. But
that's brilliant. Yeah, the guys in the England data, and I mean, it's brilliant because that just clarifies the whole picture. And the same applies here because it's still, you know, people forget, you know yourself, like America is still under British common law.
Yeah.
Ireland is still under British common law because they're bar courts, British accredited registry, and it's only a legal system. It's not a lawful system. And people say, well, what's the difference between what's legal and what's lawful? And the simple way I explain that one is I say, well, you remember a guy called Isaac Newton? And they say, yeah. And I said, well, you remember the apple fell off the tree and he discovered the law of gravity? And they say, yeah. This is usually at some of the talks, because the talks are kind of a workshop as well. Yeah. And I said, well, how could it become the legal of gravity? You know? So on that simple basis, you know, for you to break law, you have to violate law. You can't violate legal because legal doesn't apply to you because it applies to your straw man. So it's only an allegation that you may have offended what's known as an advanced corporation tax, which is the acronym for that is ACT. So any act that you may have offended by, you know, you get these invitations, which is a summons in the post, an invitation to attend a bar court, you know. So people think they have to go into these bar courts because they're sent a piece of paper, which is essentially a notice, to appear in a bar court under a legal system, and they have to give them monies. So people need to wake up. You know, it's you don't have to do this. And people say, well, how do you do it? I get arrested if I don't go into court. I said, well, I've been dragged into court. I said, no, you haven't. You actually volunteered to walk into the court.
Yeah.
And when people go voluntarily into court, well, they're recognising the court for starters. The judge may turn around and say, "Are you Mr. Joe Bloggs?" And you will say, "Yes." So you've taken 2 steps into the contract. And then they may say, "Well, do you understand the charges preferred against you?" And everybody says, "Yes." And then bingo.
That's it. They have you then, haven't they?
Yeah, they have you then. Because you've given them, you've handed over your sovereignty to them. See, it's all about sovereignty, because the people are sovereign,
Yeah.
which is another, ultimately that's the key for people to realise, that you're sovereign, you're born sovereign.
But it's about words as well, though, Harry, isn't it? I mean, as you just pointed out, that when they say, "Do you understand the charges?" we would think, or people may think, that when they say "Do you understand?" that they're actually saying "Do you comprehend?" Because most people will kind of say, "Oh, they're just using fancy legal words." So when they say "Do you understand?" it must mean like, do I comprehend? Do I know what they're saying? But it's a complete different. The definition of the understand is stand under, isn't it? It's so if you say you understand, then what you're actually saying is I stand under your authority.
That's it, yeah. So this is how they captivate people, and they captivate people's emotions, which is the psychological world. That's what it is. That's another thing to go into, what's the mental world and what's the emotional world, the psychological world. They even have that usurped, So what the psychological world is, your emotional world. It's your middle part of the body where you breathe and your heart and your speech. So they captivate that.
Yeah.
And people, are trapped in that particular part of themselves. Once they captivate the emotional part of the human, they've pretty got you, because people don't want to look or feel stupid by saying, "No, I don't understand," because it sounds stupid. And of course, the court might come around and say, he's a stupid, because he doesn't understand. But they don't comprehend what it means. And it's just the reverse language of legalese that's used against you to captivate you into saying, "I stand under your authority," as you just explained.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all agree that under common law, then the only 3 things that we have to really drum into our heads is that when we go about in our daily lives, we must not cause harm, loss, or injury to another person. So when someone says like, "Oh, you were exceeding the speed limit under the Road Traffic Act, you were going 31 in a 30 zone," or whatever, and then we get a piece of paper inviting us to pay some money, or we can either go to one of these courts. I say most people they just pay it because they don't realise all about the acts and the statutes and say the common law, which is what we're under. I mean, I know you have this thing in Ireland where I think it was a couple of weeks ago, some woman I don't know if it was Cork, where she threw an arrow into the sea, and it was all ha ha ha. It was kind of a funny. It was made up as if it was just a joke, but the reality of it was she was claiming her that we're what's it, Admiralty law? Is that the right thing? She was claiming Admiralty law. Was that it?
Yeah. Admiralty Maritime jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You see, there's essentially 2 types of law in the world: the law of the land and the law of water. So what they what they have succeeded in doing is to captivate people into rendering themselves redundant, sovereign flesh and blood man and woman, from that side of the railway track onto the right side of the railway track into the law of water, which is corporate or banking law.
Yeah.
And they have the capital it's a capital system, money system. So that's why they give you your name in capital letters. And this is why it's under maritime admiralty jurisdiction. But even people who are aware of this information, they still make a little, well, it's quite a big mistake in my opinion. They still invoke common law. See, common law then brings you back into under the crown again, because it's common law. So you don't have to invoke any law, because you're already born sovereign and you hold all rights as long as you don't break law, not offending acts.
Yeah.
So as long as you haven't caused harm, loss and injury, or be fraudulent in your affairs, and that's not just money, but pretty much everything, like deception and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As long as you walk in honor, you haven't broken any law. So they have to invite you, they have to summon you into these boxing rings, a court, let's say, because that's why it's played in a court. It's tonsil hockey match.
Yeah.
One throws the argument this side of the court and the other one throws it back, and there's a tonsil hockey argument, and the umpire in the middle is the judge in the bench, because that's the old word for, a bank was a bench. So it's all about money. It's all about currency, so they can extract your energy, your currency, through their currency system. And that's how they're keeping the people in servitude with the deception. But people keep themselves in servitude by volunteering to go in and pay these monies on allegations. I mean, if somebody goes too fast through the air, for example, well, where's the injured party? There is none. So, is the air going to make a testimony against you in a court because, you offended the air or whatever? There is no injured party. So they need your voluntary compliance, and unwittingly. So even if people, you see, if you look at on the back or the end of most summonses, there's a remittance slip, so you can pay them money, so you don't have to go to court.
Yeah.
Because money to them is, time is money. So they say, well, you've got to come into court on such a time, such a date. But hang on a sec, there's a way out of this. Just sign a check, and send it in to us. And everything's okay.
And I think there's normally a little threat in there as well, isn't there? That, you can come into court, or you can, here's your get out clause, you can just pay a sum of money. However, if you don't want to pay the money and you want to go through with this whole charade going to court, well, that sum of money may double or triple, and you might get some points on the licence, or you may spend some time in the big house.
Yes, it's all threats. Everything is a threat, you see. I mean, I'm cranking up the whole situation. I mean, the likes of income tax is voluntary compliance as well. And people really think that's a difficult one because it's the income tax, it's the revenue, And, all that derived from the revenue cutters, which are certain types of boats on the sea to transform goods on the trade routes way back in the 1800s. So it was a special type of ship built called a revenue cutter.
Yeah.
And this is where the internal revenue and internal waterways, all these terms and phrases are used to keep up that system buoyancy, the buoyancy of that money system, is the current money system buoyant? What's the markets like, is there a sail on today? You see, everything is to do with water, but they meander the words. And people might go past the shop and they say, oh, there's a sale on today. Well, there's a sale on every day. Everything's for sale every day in the week. But to captivate your attention, they have a big red sign in the window stating there's a sale on today. But sure, what's new, So it's just there every day in the week. Yeah. So people are captivated with signs and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, visually or audibly and everything, so they captivate people's emotional world and convince people that they need stuff. In other words, buy more stuff you don't need, and they have made a fantastic success of brainwashing people to buy more SHITE you don't need.
Yeah.
Christmas being a typical example of that. Yeah. You don't need the stuff because they make you want it, you see.
Yeah. Now, there's probably a lot of people there who's I'm guessing there's going to be people listening this evening, and they're probably going, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, what the hell is that? And there's probably a lot of people going, yeah, I wouldn't fall for that, but they don't realise they fall for it day in and day out. And I just want to backtrack a second, just to touch on something else that you did say about tax being voluntary. And anyone who has any issues with that at all, I have said it before, I do have a friend who she worked in the tax office, and I put a challenge to her a couple of years ago to see if she could find out something from the people she worked with or her superiors, where the law was that said that we had to pay tax, that it was mandatory. She laughed at me and she said, yeah, I'll find it for you. And I went, okay, fair play. And she came back to me about a fortnight later, kind of dumbstruck, and she said, you know what, there is no law. And she basically said the same words that you were after saying, voluntary compliance. But thanks to coming forward now, thanks to the likes of the NLP and the neuro-linguistic programming, that we see all these letters or notices, and it has red letters, and it might have a red notice and a big red box drawn around it. And because of all that, it interferes, it plays with our psyche, and therefore we see all the likes of that, and we think, oh, this is serious. This is serious stuff. I have to pay it because it's in big red letters. And can you just for people who've never heard of the NLP, Harry, can you give us a quick 101 on how it works?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I'm not jammed up on NLP, but neuro-linguistic programming essentially are certain buzzwords that are put into radios, televisions, visuals as well, subliminal messages. And I'll give you an example of how it works, my simple take on it, let's say. You know, when the census people came knocking at my door a couple of years ago, you know, to enumerate.
I remember that.
He knocked on the door, and I eventually opened it by chance, and he was there, and he said, I've been trying to get you for months, and all this kind of thing. And I said, explain to me, you know. He said, I'm the census man. I said, well, what are you telling me for? I said, he kind of got a bit irate, and he said, I have to fill in this computer, you know, you're coming up blank on it. And I said, well, why would I want to come up otherwise on it? It's not my computer, you know. Yeah. So he said, you must fill this in, or it says here you must fill this in, or you may face 25,000 washers, you know, euros.
Yeah.
Fine. And I said, right. Well, I said, I can't hear it say anything. I said, kind of looked at me in amazement. I said, well, it doesn't say anything, you know. But it says here, and I said, yeah, you keep saying that, but no, I can't. I put my ear to it. I said, no, I can't hear it speak at all. And I said, well, it reads here that you have to do this. I said, well, first of all, there's no signature on it, so there can never be a valid contract in law anyway. Nobody signed anything. So, but anyway, I said, I'll explain the meaning of the word must and may. I said, must is not mandatory. And he said, it is. I said, okay, I'll explain it to you. I said, we do this in the workshops when we give talks. I said, suppose I said to you, you must come to my party at 8 o'clock on Thursday. Failure to do so may constitute €25,000 fine or jail time. How does that sound to you? And he kind of stopped. And I said, do you see how you're being used? And he said, yes. I said, that's what the word must and may mean. It may rain tomorrow. It may not.
So he got it, did he?
So he got it, and he went off, and that was the end of it, you know. And, you know, people over the years who filled in census forms believing that it's mandatory. Well, you know, if someone is really going to push the issue, well, you say, oh, really? Well, you document and verify the obligation, or put it in writing, sign it, that you state that I got to do this, so you take the responsibility on board that, you know, to convince me that it's mandatory, but you have to state that and sign it. So you're not going to do that, obviously. He said, no. I said, well, that's okay, so, isn't it? Everything's all right. You have a nice day.
I'm guessing you never seen them after that.
No, because you don't have to fill in anything. Actually, the census form never had a sovereign seal harp on it anyway, but people believed it was an Irish census. It wasn't.
No, that was something to do with America. Some Lockheed Martin, I believe, in America, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, America is also under the Admiralty Crown Maritime jurisdiction because they have bar courts too. And, you know, filling in a 1040 in America is an income tax, you know, return form. That's all voluntary compliance. And that's why we screen freedom to fascism. And it's an important documentary for people to see who really want to comprehend what's going on and, you know, apply the contents of that very, very well-made documentary by Art Russo, who's no longer with us, he made a brilliant documentary. That everybody should see this. So we screened it many times over the years, and you know, a lot of people came to those talks and screenings, and they were just awakened straight away. And I said, well, the same situation applies to this country. It's just voluntary compliance. If you form a limited company, well, that's different, because you sign a contract with revenue to be a tax collector, an unpaid tax collector as well, and to limit yourself. So if you want to stay up doing books all night, or working harder to employ an auditor, an accountant to do it for you, well, if you want to do that, well, I can't stop you. That's your sovereign right to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's all actually, it all hangs about sovereignty, you know. And the provisional government, you know, the present government at the moment, are only a provisional government that was established by King George V in 1922. And this is actually nothing to do with politics or religion. It's just fact, you know. At the talks, I usually captivate people by asking them a question. I'd say, well, hands up, who knows America's Independence Day? I know pretty much everybody knows the 4th of July is America's Independence Day.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I said, okay, hands up, who can tell me Ireland's Independence Day? And nobody can tell me, because they don't know. And they say, what is it? And I said, well, I don't know. Well, you tell me. You know America's Independence Day. Ireland apparently gained their independence, but apparently we don't know our Independence Day. I said, what's gone wrong? You see how people have been NLP'd?
Yep.
All that essential information has been airbrushed out of the history books, because this is part of the NLP process. You know, people think they have to fight for this and fight for that. You don't have to fight for anything. You already have that creator. I call it God to make it a short and simple and easy word. We all share the same planet, you know, and you know, a creator gave us all life. I can't determine what the creator is. That's the great mystery, I suppose.
Yeah.
And you know, but we all share the same sun. We breathe the same air, whether we chemtrailed or not, I don't know. But essentially, we share the same planet. And you know, we have that creator-given right to be free and self-sustaining, unintruded by any corporation, which the government is. The government is just a corporation.
Trading for profit.
Yeah, it's on the stock market. You know, you can check Dun & Bradstreet for this. It also trades as Irish Parliament. So this corporate government, see, Ireland is the corporation that was established by the Crown.
Yeah.
ERA is the nation. It's like America is the nation, but the United States of America is the corporation. And people can't see that simple fact. They can't. It's so difficult for them to see, but when it's mentioned to them, then the penny drops. You know, I mean, if you go around Dublin, for example, you'll see on the lampposts in Latin, an obedient city is a happy city. Or another way, happy is the city where the citizens obey. You can see it on all the Dublin lampposts, but nobody knows what it means.
Yeah.
But
Hidden in plain sight.
It's right in front of your eyes and you can't see it. It's under your nose and you can't see it. But this is how clever NLP has worked.
Yeah. Just while you're talking about, say, a republic, I was kind of speaking with Alan. Well, I wasn't kind of speaking. I was speaking with Alan during the week, and he was mentioning this to me, and he asked me to run it past you. And it was can you point out the difference between a republic and a dictatorship? He thinks it's important in regards to the whole consent process, just so people can understand why we cannot consent because we are a republic, apparently. There's something about the republic that we don't have to consent.
Yeah, well, even under the present 37 Constitution, which is actually not the real one, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I'll explain that in a minute, because in a republic it needs a 2/3 majority to carry an issue. But that doesn't even happen today, because they've dragged us into this concept of a democracy. And people have, you know, been pumping the concept of democracy all the time. We need our democracy. Well, hang on a second. The democratic process, sure. But we don't live in a mere democracy. We live in a sovereign republic, which blows everything out of the water, because our Independence Day is 1919, the 21st of January 1919. Every man, woman and child became, on the record, sovereign on that day in the Mansion House, because that's when Dáil Éireann sat, Dáil Seanad Éireann sat, and Dáil Éireann courts. What sits in Leinster House is the Oireachtas Dáil, the Oireachtas Seanad, and a bar court system. That was all under the Crown. It's under the Crown today. That's why the sheriff exists in this country, who evicts the Irish people from their homes. Nothing has changed since the 1840s. Nothing has changed.
Because we've no provision, I think you mentioned before, there's no provision in our Irish constitution for the office of sheriff.
Yeah, or to pay an income tax on your flesh and blood or intellect. Yeah. Only if you sign a contract. Because you're born sovereign, you're born free, and unless you give a corporation your sign of nature, which is your signature, only then do you give them the right to tax you. Now, you know, we all pay taxes. I pay taxes as well, like everybody else, but I don't pay an income tax, because an income tax in law is your wages or your labour. And that's explained in the Freedom to Fascism documentary.
Yeah.
That's applicable all over the planet, because they need your sign of nature. So your signature is the best asset you have. Never give it away, you know. And this is what they need, you to sign everything away every day, in as much as possible, to sign these contracts, so you hand over your sovereign God-given rights. But you see, this is why a sovereign republic was instilled, in 1919. And this is why the harp was adopted. The government didn't adopt the harp as a national emblem. It was the sovereign government that sat as Dáil Éireann and Dáil Éireann courts and Seanad Éireann. This is why Éire, you'll see on birth certificates, you have Éire on one side and Ireland on the other. But what the corporation have done, they have hijacked the sovereign seal harp for commerce. So if you go into a court, this is why the family courts have the sovereign seal above the bench. The sovereign seal is the 13-string harp with Éire underneath. It's a plaque. I actually have one right in front of me here.
Yeah.
But if you go into the other courts, like traffic violation or whatever, the sovereign seal isn't over the bench. It's only a 12-string silver harp. And that's the commercial end of things. But you see, all the answers, and as I said before, this has nothing to do with politics, because I don't do politics, because politics means many bloodsuckers. That's what the word means. So, and government means control of the mind. So they have all these constructs together to, basically captivate you and to believe that you have to do these things. So they invite you into these bar courts to extract your currency. That's what it's all about.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? I mean, once you go in there, the bottom line is you're emptying your pockets. And that's all they're interested in. They're not really interested in what you have to say. Just the bottom line is get to the end of the case and you give us money, end of story.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
So they need you to hand over you see, the harp, I'll explain it, You see, it was the IRB who founded the state, Dáil Éireann and the Dáil Éireann courts. And they have to turn the sovereign seal every year in the Mansion House to claim sovereignty for and on behalf of the people. But the television and the radios have been cooking people to believe that Ireland has lost their sovereignty. You can't lose your sovereignty only if you volunteer to hand it over. What they are talking about is fiscal sovereignty, money sovereignty, banking, corporate. But you see, if you look in the notes, I mean, even see the Irish pound, it did state on the pound, even way back then in the 70s, that it was even legal tender. It did have 2 signatures, signs of nature, it had a full date, and it had a bank on it. The euro doesn't have any of that. So, what's the euro based on? It's based on absolutely nothing. It's only based on the belief that you get stuff and things if you hand over these pieces of paper in exchange. That's all. It's got no backing whatsoever.
I remember, I think it was Alan said it there, it could have been at some stage before, that on one of the UK notes, there was something on that we promised to pay the bearer. And if you went into the bank with a UK note, see me, this is a long time ago, and you went in with a note, a £5 note, then you was essentially, that was kind of it was more or less a receipt for £5 worth of silver that the bank would give you if and when you went up and requested it, or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah, that's why sovereigns existed, because sovereign was a piece of gold. You know, you could redeem that in gold, but the sovereign was actually gold. And so the currency at the time were gold sovereigns. So you actually had something of substance, but they replaced then the gold with pieces of paper. So the worst thing anybody can believe they can do if they want to try and get out of this trap of finance is to start buying, bonds, gold bonds, because it's still reverting back to a piece of paper. That's all. And if people ask themselves the question, well, what's £5 of what? £10 of what? €10 of what? It's €10 of nothing. It's £10 of nothing. But when the sovereign coin was used, you had that weight in gold, pure gold. But now they've taken all the gold in, printed pieces of paper with ink on it, and cooked people to believe that it has any value. It doesn't have any value. It's just the belief that it is, because you get food, you get cars, you get material goods if you hand over these pieces of paper. Yeah. So, as you know yourself, this is all heading towards the cashless society.
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, definitely. Because what a lot of people don't realise, Harry, and when you actually see it kind of statistically, it's kind of frightening, because we all assume, we use money, so there's plenty of money around, but the actual physical, touchy-feely currency that we use only makes up as like something like 3% of all the so-called money in the world. The other 97% is electronic. It's electronic money, and it's just kind of manufactured out of thin air.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is just, Wizard of Oz. That's all it is. But it's like that statistic at 3% is quite interesting, because on parallel with that, only 3% of any cases actually go in through the doors of a court. The rest are all settled outside. So only 3% of anything is actually trashed out in the courtroom. So there's an interesting parallel there,
That's interesting.
So if people wanted to find, if you look at a euro coin, for example, there's already a hidden 3 6s on that. People are talking about Revelation 13. That's what kind of got me going years ago at about 18 then, when I really got into this thing. I started examining the construct of what was known then as the EEC, the European Economic Community, which is now known as the EU. And what they were going to manufacture when we changed over into the euro were ECUs, but they changed their tune and then called them euros. But the ECU was another coin, which stood for the Economic Currency Unit, which is a big major step plan towards a global currency unit. And this is the overall big plan. I know you're aware of that one.
Yeah, we've heard of that before. We've heard that from a couple of sources. I think there was, I can't remember the chap's name, but there was it Mike Montagna? It could have been Mike Montagna. I'm not sure if I'm maybe misquoting him, but I know Mike is big into the MPE, the mathematically perfected economy, and I think he may have mentioned to us in a previous show that that's the way things are going with the cashless society, and he did touch about different currency of the world, and I think there was a Bancor. Is that right? A Bancor was supposed to be the world currency that they were heading for. I think they actually had a name for it, and that was it, the Bancor or something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
And there was words about they would call it the Phoenix, being akin to their Phoenix rising up from the ashes and their birth to the new order, the new world order. Like it's the Phoenix is on the back of the dollar, not the eagle. And the symbolism, the ancient symbolism on the dollar, with the pyramid, and Eucalyptus announcing the birth of Ordo Seclorum,
Yeah.
Is announcing the birth of the New World Order, and then on the right seal you had the phoenix rising up from the ashes, the birth of the New Order, and you had 13. Everything was 13, and then 13 berries, 13 arrows, 13 talons on then you had 13 stars in if you look at it closely, you'll see that it's a Star of David formation on that. So everything is very symbolic. And then hidden on the right top, you'll probably need a little spyglass to see it. You see the owl on the top right corner of $1.
Yeah, you definitely need something with high magnification to see that. But yeah, as you say, it's definitely there. There's no, I mean, you can see pictures on the internet, and you may go, nah, it's not really there. It is there, trust me.
You'll see the 3 6s on the euro coin if you look close. Well, what it is, I'll tell you what it is. Actually, it's not the number 6, but it's you'll see a series of stars, 6, and then under that you'll have 6 vertical lines, and under that you'll have 6 stars. So they and it's also contained the barcode. You know, you cannot. You know, when we joined the EU, well, the sovereign government didn't join the EU. It was a corporation that joined the EU and signed all the accession treaties. It wasn't a sovereign government. It doesn't have we don't have a sovereign government, and this is how we can vacate ourselves from, the constraints of this Royal Oireachtas, as it's now come to be known. There's more people aware of the fact that it's the Oireachtas that sits in Leinster House. It's not Dáil Éireann. They may only refer to it as the Dáil, but they can never refer to it as Dáil Éireann. And that's the difference. And these people need to listen to the subtleties, what's being NLP'd over the airways on television. They need to really listen very closely and more or less try and remember what they're not telling you,
Or as you mentioned earlier, I mean, question everything. When someone, I mean, I think that goes without saying. If you just believe everything that you see, and I know, and a lot of people do. They get their information from the front of a newspaper, or if it's not the newspaper, it's whatever is getting force fed into your brain every hour every hour on the radio, and then every half an hour they'll give you the headlines just in case you missed the news at the top of the hour, and that's repeated, every hour, 365 days of the year. And then if you miss that, then you'll have either the 6 o'clock news or the 9 o'clock news, just to make sure that you're getting fed with someone else's version of reality. I don't know if you've seen, Harry, there was an interesting article there on the Net, Jordan, I think it was about a week ago, and I think it was from a website called, I'm pretty sure it was Live Leak. I think it was either liveleak.com or something, if you just Google Live Leak. But they were showing a news broadcast of trouble in Syria. I think it was Syria anyway. And they showed it from the angle of let's say for argument's sake, the BBC cameraman. And then they showed it from an angle of some other news channel. And then they started breaking it down, and they slowed it down. And they were saying, just watch what goes on, because what you're seeing, you perceive that that's what's happening all over the country, but it's a small street, it's a small corner of a street, and you're seeing people that look like they're running all over the place. Guys are getting shot, and then the minute they get shot, an ambulance turns up almost immediately.
Oh, yeah.
There's no blood, and then they're saying, it's actually, and you can see people as if they're waiting for direction. Yeah. And the guy, he said, that's a stage. He said, that's not real. But because it's on the 6 o'clock news or the 9 o'clock news, or it's on the front page of a newspaper, that programs the reader or the viewer into believing that is reality.
Sure, and that's why they call them programs.
Yeah. I haven't even got a euro coin. I don't have a euro coin, but I'm actually searching my pocket here. The best I could do was a €2 coin, which in this current climate is probably a good thing. I must be rich. But there is something on the back of the €2 coin. I'm not sure what it is.
Oh, straw man.
No, it's not even that one. This is another coin. You were saying about the phoenix. I don't know if it's a phoenix, but it looks like some creature with massive wings. Don't know what it is. Don't know what it symbolises. But I suppose most people would use it every day and see it, and wouldn't even glance twice at it. But I'm guessing as you say, there is some symbology there, and it means something to someone.
Well, look at the Nazi emblem.
Oh yeah.
Look at the Nazi emblem. What did that have above the banner? It had a type of an eagle, you know.
Yeah.
It may not be an eagle. It could be a phoenix, like on the dollar. So what's that telling it? It's telling everything. It's the imposition of the Fourth Reich. That's what they want. They want their new world order. And Kenny, of the provisional government here, is assisting that. Because the origin of the Fine Gael party were actually the blue shirts, if you go back in history. And the blue shirts, I think, kicked off in 1934. They claimed they founded a state. But the state was founded by the IRB exactly in accordance with the proclamation between 1916 and 1919 in Vaughan's Hotel. That was the headquarters. That's where it was founded.
Yeah.
And it was transferred into, it was enacted exactly in verbatim in accordance with the principles of the proclamation for everybody in the whole country, the entire island. Do you know what I'm saying? And it was up to the people if they can choose to believe in somebody else or some other regime. They have that right to do so as well. But it didn't apply to people who didn't, wanted to apply to them. So, I go back to democracy. Democracy means mob rule. So under democracy, which actually installed Hitler into power, I think 80% of the people voted for a democracy at the time, and it installed a dictator. Democracy is a con job because democracy essentially means if 10% of the voting population come out and vote, which may mean only half of the population, 5 point something percent of that cooked vote with a pencil installs a regime that's everybody's supposed to be under. I mean, that's insane. So a very small amount of people, a handful of people, can legally install a dictatorship.
Yeah. And
people are brainwashed to believe that that's freedom.
Yeah, well, I think even the vote that we had there last week. No, it was this week, wasn't it? Yeah, it was only this week. But I think they say only 38% of voters actually came out to vote.
Yeah,
I mean, that's scandalous.
How can that apply to everyone? Even if it was valid bona fide government, it couldn't apply to everybody. Yeah. That was the difference between a sovereign republic and a democratic state. A sovereign republic, you see, that's why the sovereign seal has to be over the bench of a family court, because the family are sovereign, you see. It's not commerce, it's to do with the essential unit group of and for society, the family, which is the wellspring of all authority. And, this is what the sovereign seal harp is. It's the harp that's sovereign, But you see, Britain had to captivate that and put it on their emblem, on the bottom quarter of their standard.
Yeah.
To attempt to claim sovereignty over this country without saying it. This is why they had to put their foot on the soil within a 100-year period. So when Elizabeth II came here in 2011, she put her foot on the soil. What they were after that census, so what they were doing surreptitiously was attempting to claim sovereignty. Why do you think they had to replace the soil in Crow Park? There's English soil in Crow Park. And all the listeners, you need to realise this is not an English-Irish thing. It's nothing to do because the English people are subjugated probably more than anyone. But it was cooked into an Irish-English thing purposely to control everybody. And, who started the IRB were mainly Presbyterian people. And it was the Presbyterian people who were very brave people because they stood up and they said, no, we can't accept this tyrannical system. And they formed the IRB and formed the Sovereign Republic of Eire, Dáil Éireann and the Dáil Éireann courts. So this has been airbrushed out of history. Do you know what I mean? And people have been just brainwashed and cooked. Well,
that's something that I was going to say pees me off, but I'll refrain from saying that. But even my children, my daughter, and I'm guessing your children are the same. You're a father. That they come in from school. I'm probably one of these fathers. I know there's not a lot of us about. Well, actually, I can't substantiate that, but I take an interest in what my children are learning, or what's being taught to them, should I say, in school. And I've actually had in the earlier days, say maybe 2 years ago, I would have had disagreements, I'll put it, with my beloved, because she just thought I should let the school educate the children and leave it at that. That's what it's there for. And it was only when I pointed out to her that this was actually 2 years ago, was pretty much when I found out about our Independence Day, and I do believe I have you to thank for that. But you informed us about that. The information is there. I think you have a video presentation on it, and I learned so much from that I was asking my daughter, "What are you learning in history?" And okay, she was only in the latter end of primary school at the time, but they learned absolutely nothing about Ireland's Independence Day. And I even said to my wife, I said, like, it is there, it does exist. If it didn't exist, then that turning of the seal that I attended, where Billy Maguire was there and he turned the seal, and there was a big to do in the Mansion House. I said, if our Independence Day didn't exist, then I don't think that ceremony would have happened. I said, but it's not in the textbooks.
No.
So now then you have to wonder about the whole education system.
Sure.
What are they teaching their kids? I mean, you're saying stuff is getting airbrushed out, and it certainly looks that way.
Oh, it is, because, I mean, you look at the history books, there's nothing between the period of 1919 and 1922. It doesn't exist. You won't see anything. The airbrushed it out.
Yeah. So nothing happened?
Well, nothing. It's certainly not put in the history books. It doesn't tell you about... You might get it in a notebook, but you need to know the old book, or books, to find that it does state something in that about the Sovereign Republic was founded in 1919, enacted exactly in accordance with the proclamation, for and on behalf of the Irish people, and they just airbrushed it out, and that's what they've done. So nobody knows their Independence Day. I mean, the Common Purpose Agenda in Ireland, fronted by KPMG, is to fast forward that New World Order programme throughout the schools and throughout every aspect of society. They've infiltrated the educational system, they've infiltrated the legal system, they've infiltrated the corporation system, they've infiltrated everything in our society. So people who are put in certain situations in society to fast forward their hidden secret coup d'etat agenda, you need to recognize them in your society. They could be on school boards. You have partnership programs. Anytime you see partnership programs or sustainability, that's common purpose. So the people who are fast forwarding these programs, they're all over the place. Green flag schools. Yeah, they're common purpose programs, and it's under the guise of eco. To be friendly, to be eco-friendly. Now, I'm very pro looking after the planet as much as we can, but these are secret hidden agendas where people are programmed to, you can't say this, and everything has to be politically correct. You can't say things too loud. Even the words harassment are now reduced into harassment. These are so subtle NLP programs that people don't even recognize them. So it's not called harassment anymore, which is a pretty punched kind of a word, but now it's blended into harassment, because they turn people into church mice, tiptoeing around everything, and don't say anything out of order, and don't offend, or you can't say this and you can't say that because you might offend people, I mean, where have the responsible grown-up adults in this world gone? Where have they gone? They've engineered them into voluntary compliance. Yeah, they brainwashed them. They have, and as we've said, they're starting at a young age as well. They're starting in the schoolroom, and I 100% agree that when you like, people may say, no, the green schools, that's a good thing. Well,
when you you look at all the small pieces and a dot here to get the green school. Okay, you can't say this. You can't. There's certain words you can't say, and there's certain things you can't do. Okay, fine. Maybe on their own they may be, good things. They may be bad things. But when you start kind of knitting them all together, you do see a pattern beginning to form, and that pattern is the tiptoe approach, whereby they want to. They have an agenda. This thing. They have the agenda. They know where they want to be. They know how to get there. And it's slowly, piece by piece by piece. And all of a sudden, one day, you wake up and you're in this new society. You go, wow, how the hell did that happen? Well, It's happening now, and it's happening around us every day, and we don't even realise it. Well, some people don't realise it. I say there are people who obviously do realise it, and they try and take action and steps to rectify it or to change it. But even those people, they meet with barriers all the time. I mean, I know for a fact that there's issues in Alan's ears will be on fire now. But I know there was issues in Alan's son's school, and even Alan went down. I think he went down and had a chat with the parents' committee, and he just met up with a brick wall. They didn't want to know. They just wanted to be left do what they wanted to do, unhindered by anyone. They didn't want any challenges. They just wanted to go with the flow, and whatever was coming down the line, they wanted to just implement it, and this and that and the other. But even when you start to challenge them, you start to wake up and you start to challenge them. They are the system, and they will defend themselves to the last. And even as regards the whole policing thing, where you can't say certain things, that's out of context and what have you, and political correctness. It's instilled in people at such a young age that when you start to kind of reach, a certain age and say adulthood, you then start to police other people, and you start telling them, oh, you can't say this and you can't do that. So now, we're doing their work then for them.
That's it. That's how the Nazi program was installed, incrementally, surreptitiously, where you couldn't see it. It's not visible. It's silent.
Yeah.
And see, the big problem for most people is that they can't recognize the hidden enemy. They can't see, it's invisible. And it's genius. I call it evil genius, what they've done. How they've engineered this is evil genius. I mean, it's some construct what they've done. It's evil genius. And if people don't recognize this, if they don't really wake up, and it's important for people to, take responsibility, and that's what sovereignty is about. It's not about anything like political. It's not about religion. It's nothing to do with that. When you take responsibility for your actions, like don't break law, you're acting in a responsible way. So it's up to people to be responsible how they cannot be deceived, and one of the ways of doing that, I find anyway, or have found, is to stop drinking the tap water because that's medicated with hydrofluorosilicic acid that they call fluoride, which is not, it's a lie. Chlorine gas, H2SO4, which is battery acid, sulfuric acid, and probably one of the worst of all is aluminium sulfate. So when people boil the kettle for a cup of tea, they're being medicated, and all those elements stick together, cross the brain protective barrier, and cake the pineal gland. Your pineal gland is very important. Some people call it the third eye, because it makes you keep aware of, people tell it paranoid. It's not paranoid. All the word paranoid means is to foresee an event before it happens, and it's just keeping your aerials sharp and recognizing what's going on before it happens, and that's all being caked over, so you can't make decisions. It's very difficult to make decisions. It's very difficult to see what's on a piece of paper in front of you. It's very difficult to listen to essential information that is trying to free you from this, I suppose, evil system, or antichrist system, if you want to call it that. And I use that because Antichrist is just darkness. Christos is just light. That's all it is. But they've made a big business out of, religions. Look at the amount of religions that's all over the planet. And that divides people. And that's purposely done. And, they collect tons and billions and millions of money every year. They don't have to pay tax on them. there's enough churches in the world to house the homeless, but that's a no. But yet people go into these buildings every day, or certainly every week, a lot of people, and they give them money, to listen to stuff that is incomprehensible because it's never explained to them anyway, So
Yeah.
these are just methods of control.
No, I think that's actually very important what you said. I mean, about the churches, that there is a religion for there's a religion for everybody. There's if you don't like this religion, well, you can go and you can dabble with another one and see if that suits you, and that has kind of come on my radar now. Like, I was born, and I think I was brought up as a Catholic, and when I reached a certain age, I started asking questions, and I wasn't getting answers. So I realised, well, that's something that I'll leave it on the back burner. But I kind of just walked away from religion, and I kind of lived my life pretty much with the don't cause harm, loss, or injury, and that's how I live my life. And my daughter now, she's in secondary school, and they're doing religion, and I take an interest in it now, and I want to know what she's learning. And she said she wants to drop it as a subject because she's of the same mind as me, 12 years of age, going on 13. And not that I'm 12 going on 13, but you know what I mean. But she's starting to see religion as a means of control because of what she would have learned in primary school, and now it's just kind of been hammered in a little bit harder in secondary school. And she's even saying to me, she only said to me there about 2 weeks ago, she said, I need to get out of this class. I'll do any other subject, but I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in it. I can see, she says, I can see what it's about. And I thought, if she can see that at 12, then my work is done. But it's just it's when you realise that, and you look at all the wars, and a lot of wars and trouble in the world, a lot of it is all based around religion, because you don't believe the same thing I believe, and my God's better than your God, and my God will kick your God's ass, and you know what? It's BS. Do you know what? It's bullshit. I'm not going to say BS. That's me just going get down the PC road. It's bullshit. That's what it is.
Sure, it's bullshit. Of course, it's bullshit. But Ireland can change it, because you see, Ireland, the whole concept and the information about what sovereignty is gone all over the world now, and even the people in England, the guys in England and the girls in England over there, they have declared themselves as a sovereign entity,
Yeah.
Anyone can do that all over the world anyway, but you're born sovereign anyway, and you don't need to form political parties, because if you form another political party, you're still bringing it back under the Royal Oireachtas. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't have to form political parties. If there was a political party formed, well, maybe it'd be a party for the people, the People's Party, or a sovereign party, but they don't want the information out there. So, it's up to all of us here to disseminate that information amongst people, because now that the light switch has gone on, that people know this information, we actually have a duty to inform our fellow man, woman. That's our creator given duty, or we call it a God-given duty if you wish. And even on that alone, these people who are in positions of authority in this provisional government under the Crown, the Royal Oireachtas, the likes of, let's say, Michael E. Higgins, who is, he declares himself as an agnostic or an atheist, and Eamon Gilmore the same. So how can they swear an oath under God to hold a position even in a provisional government? So they actually don't hold office, and people need to know these simple facts. They can't hold office because they don't even satisfy the criteria of holding an office even in a de facto government, because they claim they're agnostics and atheists, and that's okay too, but apparently under the rules and regulations they have to swear an oath under God. But how can they do that if they don't believe such exists?
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember, I didn't know about Michael D, but I heard it there about the other chap, Gilmore. I heard that he was supposed to be standing up and making some speech, and he was going to be swearing something to God. Something else interesting as well, which I didn't know, and I think I could have read this on your website, We The People.ie, that Michael D, although he stands up and he's the president of Ireland. He's not actually the president of Ireland. Sure, he's not. He's only the president of the Royal Oireachtas.
He's only the president of 26 county corporation.
Yeah.
You see, the president of the IRB, which holds the sovereign seal, he holds the presidency of the whole island of Ireland.
Yeah. Okay,
and that's ERA. ERA is the nation, Ireland is the corporation. And it's the same in America, as I explained. You know, this is how the Indian nation, they all talk about sovereignty. And this is how the Indian nation can vacate the United States of America in their lives. They don't have to pay income. They don't have to file in 1040 tax returns because they're sovereign people. They have that sovereign right not to sign these contracts. You know, and that's what we have. Everybody has. You know?
Yeah, I actually heard there a couple of weeks back, and I mentioned it on one of the shows anyway, that I think it was in a document, and it was an online document that I seen. I think the title of it was dealing, or how to deal with the Gardaí, or how to deal with An Garda Síochána. I can't remember the exact title, but it was even saying in that, as regards your rights, you know, your sovereign rights, that if you don't know them and you don't invoke them, then as far as people around you are concerned, or those people who are trying to, you know, do bad things to you, like lock you up or extract money from you, that if you don't invoke your rights or know that you have them, then you don't have any. If you don't know them, you haven't got them. Because
if you don't know. And you see what they've done with the guards. See, the guards wear the sovereign seal harp on their buttons, 7 strings.
Yeah.
The military wear that same on their buttons, 8 strings. Okay, and that all derived from the proclamation. And people forget that, even the guards, because the guards, you know, Garda Síochána, as you know, is
Guardians of the Peace.
Guardians of the Peace.
Yeah.
They are not policy officers, police officers that everybody has been cooked to believe, because a police officer enforces company policy. So what the guards have been used and abused to do is to extract monies from the people for the corporation. You see, this is why we got the Garda oath done on cards years ago, for people to hold on them if they were being violated. All you had to do, and it was in some of the videos, I think, outside the Royal Oireachtas there a week or two ago, when people were protesting, you know, they were holding up these cards with the Garda oath, because the Gardaí began to attempt to pepper spray people.
Yeah.
You know, that's a violation of your sovereign, God-given right. There's nobody breaking law.
Unfortunately, though, they may have had the Garda out, but from some of the video footage and some of the pictures that's floating around, it didn't do a whole hell of a lot of good. The guards still stepped outside of their sworn oath and just made full use of this pepper spray. All I could say was, Jesus, isn't it lucky that the guards there on the day weren't armed with guns, because they probably would have taken life.
I wouldn't bat it for a minute, because they had seemingly a crack squad unit around the corner in vans, ready for people to lose it. You see, they want the people on the streets to lose it so they can implement emergency legislation. This is why they wanted to abolish the Seanad, because although it's still under the Royal Oireachtas, if that Seanad had been abolished, that would have paved way for emergency legislation to be implemented by members of the Oireachtas Dáil at a whim, to implement as precursor to martial law. They want people on the streets up to cause problems. They want people protesting and being angry on the streets so they can implement this. Now that has been prevented somewhat, but people need to remain very alert. I'm not talking about you have to be going around looking behind your shoulder, but they need to be aware of what's being implemented here. You know, they need to know the bigger picture, because when you know the bigger picture, you can recognize the implementation of that at a national and at a local level. You know, I mean, the idea is to get rid of the Constitution anyway, even though the 37 Constitution still makes Ireland enumerative to the Crown via that contract in 1922, because the 22 Constitution, Article 17, is the oath to King George V. All Oireachtas members must take an oath to King George V. And the guts of that, all that has been carried over to the 37 Constitution. Okay?
Yeah.
That's still there. That's why that's why the sheriff still exists in this country. You know? So it's a slow cook all the time. And this is why they, draft new guards in who are unfamiliar with our history, And a lot of the old guys are put out to graves because they know pretty much, just some of them are left that know the origin of all this. But they don't want everybody else. It's a slow cook. And they want to implement a police force in Ireland, not a guard. They want to get rid of guardians of the peace.
Yeah, so I think it already says that on the Garda website. That's one thing I noticed a long time ago, that if you go to Garda, I think it's Garda.ie, whatever the site may be, but it does actually say on Garda Síochána, and then on the top banner it says Ireland's police force.
Yeah, but it's not. It's the policy force of Ireland Inc., the corporation. They're only keeping the peace for the corporation, so people can be slaves and keep paying their taxes and pay, go into the courts on allegations and render their sovereignty redundant by agreeing to these codes, policies, statutes, and acts.
Yeah. Sorry, Harry. I just want to say I know I'm going to get corrected, and I just double checked it because I remember there was something about it before. But on Garda.ie, it doesn't actually say Ireland's police force. It just says Ireland's National Police Service. So either way, the word police is in there, so it's policy and forces either way.
Well, you see, the first, Michael Staines, the first Garda Commissioner, stated, he said, on Garda Síochána will succeed not by force of arms, but by their moral authority as servants of the people. That was a statement from the first Garda Commissioner, Michael Staines, way back in 1922. So people need to ask, well, what went wrong? But you need, people need to protect themselves or know how to protect themselves through, when people, this is why they give you a piece of pencil to mark on a referendum form, for example, or voting card or whatever, because you can rub out a piece of pencil. They don't give you a handwritten, a blue, or they don't give you ink because it's difficult to rub out ink.
Yeah. When you do it in ink, you make your mark and it's a permanent mark.
Yeah, but it can't be interfered with. It's very difficult. And when you write in a blue pen, that's very, very difficult to doctor. This is why the system, at all costs, they hand you a black ink pen to sign their forms with, because they can doctor black.
Yeah.
It's easy to doctor black than it is blue. So black is dead anyway. There's a lot of symbology in black, and because blood goes through your veins, it's colour blue, so black is dead. The judge wears black, everything is black, and it's reversed, it's evil, it's spell live backwards, it's anti-live, so
you have blue blood.
Black, it's dead. So this is why the whole symbolism of black. People also need to recognise the fact that all the street furniture is now grey. Like the Lewis, it says grey. Everything's grey. It's an NLP. It works in the mind. You don't realise it, but it's Nazi grey. It's to implement this psychology NLP takeover, and it's done surreptitiously, and people can't realise it. They can't see it. The signs of it,
Harry, was just going back a second about when you spoke about the Constitution. We did hear this before, and I think I could be wrong, but I think. Did Vin have some information up during the week that I think someone had done a painstaking literal English translation from the original Irish Constitution, because I think in the what's known as the Blue Book there was a lot of indiscrepancies in that, wasn't there? Where it wasn't a literal translation.
No, because many years ago, a man called John Riney from Donegal, himself and his wife, who were on this many years about. Their first language is Irish, and if they go into court on an issue, they speak Oscalia, and the courts can't handle this. So he's been a headache for many years, and his wife, not because they caused issues or broken laws, because they're asking questions. So when I met that very interesting man a number of years ago, he had said, he brought to my attention the fact that the original text draft by Micheál Ó Corúil exists, and he showed me a copy of this, and I said, oh my God, the difference is just amazing. So I went down to the Government Publications Office, attempting to buy a number of copies of that, and he said, no, we don't have that. And it's lucky I took a photograph of it, because I said, you mean this? And they said, I think you better check, I said, because this is the Government Publications Office, and you're telling me that you haven't got a copy of this. So he reluctantly went down to the basement and dug up 4 copies. So I got the last 4 copies in existence. It's the original text draft by Micheál Ó Corúil, which is the exact literal translation from the language Irish, then into English, which is completely different and more powerful than the Blue Book. And I should have it in the head somewhere. Let's say Article 41.1.1, which deals with the family. And on that, it states in the Blue Book that the state recognises the family is the most fundamental unit group of for society, and is as a moral institution possessing inalienable, imprescriptible rights, antecedent and superior to all positive law. Now that sounds great.
Yeah.
But the original text draft states that the state acknowledges that the family is the most basic fundamental unit group of and for society according to nature, and that it is a moral institution possessing inalienable, invincible rights, which are more ancient, and higher than any human statute.
Big difference.
Big difference. So what that particular article, that's just one of them. The whole book is full of the true wording. So that's why we published it up on the net, and Linda did a great job, translating that and making that available, only the other week, all the articles.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of work he did on that.
Oh, he did know, fair play, and I think that should be people, whoever might be listening, and if they're interested, they should go and check that out and discover for themselves, because as you just said, this is something that was at the stroke of I won't say the stroke of a pen, but someone doing a translation from our national tongue to English. A lot of it was watered down, and maybe it's gone, and that was done really, really quickly. So I mean, I think it's important. It's important for us to know exactly what's in the original one, because that's obviously one we're going. That's the one I want to live my life under, not some makey uppy one. Yeah, but we can invoke that. But the real constitution is the one that was enacted in 1919, exactly in accordance with the proclamation. And you see, the answers to all these austerity problems and so forth exist in the proclamation, because the 2 most important words in the proclamation are the words sovereign and indefeasible. And what that means is that you're born sovereign, as I explained earlier on, and indefeasible, which means that principle in the Constitution, which is actually the Constitution from the IRB, they instigated all this. It means that none of those sovereign rights cannot be annulled, diluted under any circumstances whatsoever. And this is why they need your signature on all the forms, so you render yourself redundant, and now they can charge you and tax you because you gave them the authority to do so, unwittingly or otherwise. Yeah. And this is why it's so important. And, if people on the fringes of that, when people are in school, maybe your child might bring back a piece of paper from the school or the teacher, and on it may state, do you wish your child to be vaccinated? Answer yes or no. And of course, we know vaccinations are part of the Agenda 21 program. Yeah. For the
global union, where they want to vaccinate the entire population of the planet. And in that may contain a mood chip, which is only the half the size of a grain of sand. So that means the entire population are chipped unknowingly. And the people who may administer these so-called vaccinations with good intent, because they've been cooked as well, are microchipping a population unknowingly, you know. And this is the bigger plan. This is, as you know, is the bigger plan.
Yeah, and people may say, no, that's all conspiracy. Check it out, because there's a lot of information on the net, and, you know, from reputable sources that this is what they want.
Oh, it is. Well, it's a conspiracy fact.
Yeah.
It is a conspiracy. I mean, if two people get together and, you know, have a plan together, that is conspiring. It's not necessarily bad to conspire. It could be for good intent. But this is conspiracy against the people for the global union agenda. And, you know, this information was ridiculed many years ago, over the years, and trying to wake people up years ago with no technology like the internet. That was very, very difficult. But now that we have the net, and we have people like yourselves and people out there who copping onto this information and can, you know, research this if they wish. It's very easy. You know, people need to know that the euro notes are already microchipped anyway, with a MU chip, MU chip. It's created by Hitachi. And that MU chip can be anywhere. You can't even see it. It could be, I mean, Catherine Albridge, who has a website, We The People Will Not Be Chipped. She explains this, and she explains it in the documentary Freedom to Fascism. She said the microchip is so small that it can be the dot on an I on a food product label. So, you know, you might ask yourself, well, why do I get shocks sometimes if I take an item off the shelf? You might get a static shock. Well, that's because, you know, this technology is being used for stock taking. So, you know, people are being charged with electricity because they wear rubber soles. Because when you wear a rubber-soled shoe, you build up static electricity. You can't discharge it because, you know, when are people wearing leather shoes? You don't hear people walk anymore.
No.
Because, you know, leather shoes discharge the build-up of static electricity in the body. So, which makes the body acidic, which means you're susceptible to disease. A well-balanced pH body doesn't build up acid. So, hence you have a lot of people getting sick because the static is building up in the body, causing the body to be acidic. The people are getting cancers, they're getting MS, they're getting all these diseases because of a static build-up. So people need to, these are very, very subtle methods of Agenda 21 that people, it's literally under your nose and you can't see it. So, you know, one of these, there's loads of little ways we can make changes. First of all, we can get a filtration on our tap system if we have no access to a water pump. This is why we the people, we go around the country when possible and we reinstate water pumps. We put them back in operation. We paint them up and clean them up and put a sign up, you know, restored by We The People. And you can do this. I mean, everybody is the people, so you can do this in your local area, and this is how you empower yourself. You don't ask the council for permission. You just do it. You just act, and you get your water pump in your area, so because the water charges are going to kick in. So with fluoridated water and aluminium sulfate, so you can offset that. This is what's called paranoia. You're foreseeing an event that hasn't kicked in yet, so you make prophylactic medicine moves. You anticipate this and you make provisions. So it's up to the people to do this. That's just one way. So your thinking will be a lot clearer. Therefore, you become more aware of the hidden agenda in your locality. Also, you need to get at least one pair of leather shoes. You get them in a second-hand shop because, I mean, they're quite expensive to buy new, purposely. So you can wear leather-soled shoes to dissipate the static build-up. And you will feel better over a number of weeks because you will be taking control of yourself. You will be acting in a sovereign way. You're taking responsibility for your health, for your well-being, and you're not going to be deceived anymore. Your sharpness is going to increase, and you can see all these signs right around you, where most people can't because they've been cooked.
It's like that film, and I know a lot of people who are on here have seen the film. I think it's one of the cheesy 80 films called They Live. The guy with the sunglasses.
Yeah, that's what it is, and that's what we're all about here, in a sense, to make people see what the hell is really going on.
Yeah, it's just I wouldn't call it a passage, a sentence that I came across there earlier on, and it was just someone was saying that in this age, which is basically pretty much sums up what you've said as well, that in the age of the internet, we've so much information, and we have access to so much information where years ago people didn't. You had your library and that was it, but thanks to the World Wide Web, there's so much information that's there at the touch of a button that in days like now, to be ignorant is not an excuse, it's a choice.
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt about it. Now the information is getting out there. It's up to the people to make the choice, to make the move, to take the responsible step for themselves and their family. And for future generations, we may never get another opportunity to do this again.
No, as someone said before, Harry, it could have been you, I don't know who it was, but someone said that we are the change that we are waiting for. And that's true, because, as you just said there about the water pumps, there's one of them a couple of 100 yards up the road from me. And it's there, it's under a tree, it looks like it hasn't seen a lick of paint in maybe 20, 30 years. And just to go up, get it working again,
sure.
a lick of paint. I mean, it's being proactive, and I'm guessing that's a question now. Actually, now that you're there, this is a question that I actually wanted to ask you many moons ago. Those pumps, they're not on the communal water systems. Where are they connected to wells, or what's the story with them?
Probably, but people do need to be careful about the MSG and the pesticides runoff into these wells from modern farming. Part of Agenda 21 again. So, how to get these wells working? 8 out of 10 have all the mechanisms in them. So what you need to do is remove the cap. You probably need a ratchet set, maybe. To that. It might be a 1/2-inch bolt, whatever. But just take the cap, open the cap, and prime it with a bucket of water, because what's in those wells are leather kind of diaphragms. And when you wet the leather, the pump will then begin to make suction. And you'll be surprised. Keep filling it with water, wet the leather inside, and keep pumping that pump, and you will eventually get water out of it. Now, whether that water, I can't guarantee if the water's contaminated with pesticides or not. That's up to you to determine. But people can make the step to do this. And
plus, I mean, look, even if they didn't use the water over, I mean, just the fact to get it pumping and clean it up, I mean, they're part of our heritage. There's thousands of them scattered around the countryside, and they're a nice piece of they look nice. It's
sure.
Just clean them up, paint them.
Paint them up and put a sign on it with information on it. Have a little sign there with information cards or something. And, you're going to be charged for water soon anyway. That's going to be a very difficult one for people to offset. But at least you can get water that you can wash yourself, you can wash your clothes in, the pots or whatever it may be. And you may only you can flush the toilet, because the toilet uses a third of the water anyway. And at least you're going to save minimum 2/3 or 3/4, I don't know, of the water that you're going to be paying for with the installation of these pumps. So it's up to you to do that. Everybody to do that. Yeah. That's just one way of, making the change. It's up to the people to do it.
And speaking of these water charges, do you reckon if and when they come in, return to sender, would that work on them as well as other things like e-flow notices? Well,
if it's a water notice, sure, it'll legally and lawfully do it, but they will probably just turn your water off, and they'll beat you into submission. So you need to make plans for this. People need to make provisions for this, because it's going to be very difficult to get medicated water into your tap if you don't pay these notices, although a notice in law is not a bill. But you can still, try it I mean, this is why, as I said, the letter was done to eFlow to explain how and why this works. That letter was just done so people hold the evidence in their hands, because eFlow had to return a letter to say they cancelled, that states that they had to cancel the notice and there are no further toll roads against your vehicle. I mean, that's the proof of it. So that's why it was done.
Yeah. Has anyone ever got back to you, Harry, across the country, anyone who has done that would say, we'll just use eFlow as an example. Have you ever received communication from people to say, yes, I've tried it and it worked, completely successful, or what sort of feedback do you get?
Of course it works, because Mick Curtin, who's on that piece of paper, I had bought a vehicle off that guy, and he was getting all these notices, and he said, look, Harry, Jesus, I'm getting all these notices, because I didn't transfer the name, you see, of the vehicle. And I said, okay, Mick, because I've been telling him this for quite a while, but, now's your opportunity to see how it works, Mick. So I did a letter, and that was the proof. So he knows the information now, inside out, and he's going around spreading it all over the place.
Good
And
stuff.
it turned out to be, it was on the news a couple of months ago, that 6 million notices were cancelled. 6 million.
Wow. Okay.
So it was on the news somewhere that 6 million eFlow notices were cancelled. I'm not saying that it was because of that, but I think it pretty much had a lot to do with it.
I'd say it did, and it's a step in the right direction. Just in relation to the water, we just have information in here from Alan, saying apparently they cannot switch off your water if you refuse to pay, but they can reduce the pressure, so you won't be able to use your dishwasher, washing machine, etc. But sure, as far as I know, the only way they can reduce your pressure is from the little shower outside your home. And sure, I think we can all open them anyway. So obviously I'm guessing if someone comes along and reduces your pressure, you just go out there after they've gone and turn it back on, or turn it back up.
Of course, but they may put a kind of a lock on it. But what people can do, preempting all this, right, is when it's in full open position, cement is interestingly hard, and you could probably cement it and to be left in an open position, which will be very difficult to undo by the so-called authorities. So, people need to, use your imagination, yeah?
Well, it's like you say, you see what's coming down the line and just be prepared for it. Take steps now, while we can.
Of course. Like I said, we may not get another opportunity to do this. Now, on the issue of people coming home from school with a form for the parents to fill in, do you wish your kids to be vaccinated or not? Answer yes or no. Once you put your signature, any mark on that paper may be construed as your mark. Okay? You don't have to be able to read and write to put your mark on it.
Yeah.
That may be construed as a contract. So people are making the mistake by answering no. You don't answer anything on that. You simply return that to sender. Because once you put a mark, if you tick in the box, no, I do not wish my child to be vaccinated, that is a contract. But it's a contract in dispute. Yeah?
Yeah, it's the same as the subject matter jurisdiction. They send it out to you. You put any mark, be it the yes or the no, then you're basically giving them subject matter jurisdiction over you.
You're giving them joinder, which is what they require. They need a contract with you. So you've just given it to them. So you simply return the sender. So this is why the likes of eFlow, who was set up by Pierce Fitzgibbon solicitors, the same solicitors who send the threatening letters to people to pay. It's the same crowd. It's just money. It's a big racket. So when they send you an eFlow notice, that's only an offer of a contract. So they put €3.70 on it to captivate you into a contract. So people happily and willingly send them €3.70, hoping that the problem will go away. But no, now you've created a contract with these people. Now they're going to bill you like hell because you gave them the contract. Yeah?
Yeah. Just as what you're saying there, just want to backtrack a little bit about the forms for the vaccination, the consent forms. It's funny because my daughter came home there 2 weeks ago with one for this HPV virus, and pretty much, I think she was the only one who didn't get it done. And I think I was telling Walter Graham about this, that after other kids in the class had got it done. Some of them were sick almost immediately, and some fainted on the way home. Obviously, their parents didn't do the research where I did. Me and my wife did. So my child didn't get that poison injected into her. And then Friday, just gone, she come home with yet another one. And this is for another one, a TDP or TDAP. Something else that they want to inject into them. Now, thankfully, that form is still in there in the kitchen table. And I do believe my wife actually made her mark on it, shall we say. So obviously I'll have to rectify that now before that goes back to the school. So thanks for the heads up on that one, Harry.
It's very, very important that people do this. Now, it really is. Now, if you can copy that, get a good clear photocopy of that in colour as it is, with whatever serial number is on it, you can simply, well, that was the one you received, unmarked, and it goes back, return to sender, unmarked, and say nothing and keep saying it, because you don't have to do anything, Simply return to sender. That's all you do.
Yeah, no, that's good information. I wouldn't have actually thought of that, only say that you did say it. But
it's vital that people know this, because, I mean, how they destroyed the Indian nation was they got the chief of the tribe who didn't know the language anyway, and he put a pen in the chief's hand, and they guided that hand onto the paper, and all it was a dot on the treaty paper, and that was construed as a contract. And of course, then they went in and they murdered the nation, and they went to bed and slept because they were satisfied that in their legal society, the Indian nation had signed a contract for them to do so. That's how subtle this NLP is. And they're using it every day in the week. People need to be very vigilant. You do not put any mark on their papers. You simply return it to sender and the envelope that it may come in. You tidy it all up, put it back in the envelope. In fact, you don't have to read it out. You don't have to open it anyway, because all these letters are not in your interest. So you just simply return it to sender. Yeah.
Oh, I've actually said that to people before, because it's amazing the power of even an envelope, the colour of an envelope. A brown envelope comes in with a harp or a sovereign seal, whichever way people call it, and immediately that they have palpitations. They don't even know what's in it yet. But based on what you were saying, is you don't even if you don't want to know what's in it, get rid of it. Send it back to where it came. The same scenario when I think you said it to us. It could have been last year, maybe the year before, when people knock on your door, that you're not obliged to open it. You can look out the window, and if you don't recognise them, well, you don't have to open the door.
Sure.
And people don't even realise that. It's amazing that a lot of people, they hear knock on the door, they go and answer it straight away.
Yeah. I mean, about a year ago, I opened the door. There was somebody knocking on it, but I had to go out anyway.
Yeah.
So there was two policy officers, Garda Síochána, Guardians of the Peace, and he said, because I was returning to sender invitations to court,
Yeah.
They said, there's a summons, so they pushed it into my hand, and I said, I look after that, and I said, well, you've done your job, and they were satisfied that they had done their job by delivering this. They were acting as warrant officers, so they served this warrant. And I said, okay, thanks, guys. And I just locked the door and walked around to the post box and just returned to sender. And that's all. And I went down the road to get a bottle of milk, which I needed as well. Everything was okay, and everything is okay. Because it goes back to the clerk. You see, it's commerce. That's why they have to have a clerk. It's just paperwork. It's just bookwork. So the clerk gets this RTS and he has to scrap it and put it in the bin. Because how can he deal with it? So he has to zero this offer of contract. In other words, I have another 150 or 200 here who did recognise this offer of contract, so I'll process them. So the list is handed up to the judge, who makes the legal determination on how much you pay. That's all you do. This stuff is so simple, people can't realise. They want to complicate simplicity.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to do that, well, there's not a lot I can do about it, But for a lot of people who do genuinely want to make the change in their life, to implement this in their life, one suggestion is to probably, if you want to kind of begin to step out of this, I mean, you don't have to have a number on your door, That's your choice. If you want to have a number on your door, well then,
Yeah, I love that one actually. It's funny you say that because I was speaking about that to Alan about a week ago. We got a piece of paper in the door, and it was a lovely colour piece of paper, and it said, "TV licence inspectors are in your area. Please have your licence ready to present to them," and all this. And I just looked at it and I said, "I'll leave that on the window ledge there, and if and when these people call around, I'll give it back to them because it's no good to me." And have the camcorder charged. So I answer the door with the camcorder and record these people anyway, and just tell them that I don't recognise them and send them on the way and give them back their piece of paper. But that was something that struck me as well. That I think you did say it before. You don't have to have the number. So you can take it off. So when they send something and it comes to your door, well, you don't know who it's for.
Yeah, well, it's your life, our lives, my life, is none of their business. Only if you make it their business, because it's all a business. That's all it is. So I chose many, many years ago for my life to be my life and not theirs. Yeah. So people may say, "Oh, you have a PPS number." I said, "Do I?" "Yeah, here it is." "Really?" "Well, I recall signing no such contract." It's not your number. It's your straw man's number. But if you want to accept responsibility for a straw man, which is a piece of paper, if you want to do that, well, sure, if you want to go ahead and do it, that's up to yourself. But you don't have to dialogue with these people. That's the whole key it is. You don't have to do dialogue, because dialogue can be construed as contracting, you see.
Yeah.
You don't have to dialogue with anyone.
No.
So, I mean, if the guards come up to me and, try to, if this is just a hypothetical situation, and they'll say, "Where are you going?" I say, "Well, I'd be courteous. I'll say, "Well, I'll just point that way." "Where are you coming from?" I'll just look behind me and point that way. And if you continue to try and engage me in dialogue, I just continue to walk on. And if they block me or whatever, I'll say, "Is there a crime being committed?" And they'll say no. I said, because, well, if there is, I'd like to report it straight away.
Yeah. Harry...
So you reverse the headache.
Yeah. Reverse the headache. I love that. Harry, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm watching the time, and there's only a couple of seconds left. So I just want to say thanks to 2 hours. 2 hours have flown by. I want to thank you very much and give you the closing statement. And then if you just want to tell people where they can find out more information about what you speak about, and that'll be great.
Sure. Well, the key in this, the big message is that the people are sovereign, not the executive. That's the ultimate message. And if you need to get a talk going in your area, I don't charge for talks, maybe just to cover expenses and diesel and travel, but the talks are free, because people need to know the information,
I think that's very fair. And your website as well, We The People.ie, I know you say you're still kind of a work in progress, but there's a lot of good information on there as well.
Oh, yeah. And I must post stuff up on your site if it's okay as well.
Absolutely.
Because, I mostly use MSI because it's active, it's kinetic, it's dynamic, and people are interacting all the time from different parts of the world. So there's only a fraction on We The People, It's only a little bit. I don't have any. I've published little or nothing of the stuff that I do have,
Yeah. But even so, what's up there is very good. It's very interesting. It's a good starting point as well for people. Harry, we're over time, so I want to say thanks very much for joining me this evening. We're back in Studio 1 next week. Alan will be back. So again, thanks to Harry for taking time. Our guest next week, I think it's Clive. I'm going to pronounce this guy's name wrong. Clive DeCarl. He's a health researcher and a speaker and an educator. He's going to be joining us next week. So, another show in the bag.